Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the October 10th, 2018 meeting of the Ascension Parish Planning Commission. Let the record reflect that all commissioners, with the exception of Mr. Dumas, are present tonight. I would ask everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we get the staff to introduce themselves, please?
Stacy Wells, Secretary for Planning and Development.
Cody Martin, the Attorney for the Planning Commission.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Eric Poche, Parish Planner.
Lance Brock, Zoning Official.
Sean Chereau, Engineering Reviewing Agency.
Thank you very much. All right, at this time, it's time for the chairman's comments, and I have no comments, but I would see Miss Lauren Marshall in the audience to update us on the master land use plan from CPEX.
Good evening. How are y'all doing tonight? Thank you for having me. Whenever it changes to my presentation on the screen, I'll get going. Okay, thank you. So I'm here to give an update on the Ascension Parish Master Land Use Plan, which Center for Planning Excellence, my organization, is the consultant to Ascension Parish on. And here's our process. Generally, we're going for about a year or a year and a half, and we're partway through. So we're between two phases at this point, between the visioning process and then deciding where we want, where the parish would like to be in the future. So tonight I'll review two open houses we had recently for the planning process. On September 26th, we had an open house at the Gonzales Civic Center. And then on September 27th, we had one in Donaldsonville at Lowry Elementary. And at these open houses, we covered three major topics in poster format and then with a presentation as well. And all these topics are still open for comment on the plan's website. So part of why I'm here is to encourage you and anyone who's listening to go onto the website and give their input as well. So I'll review those three topics that I mentioned. So first we talked about scenarios, and scenarios are different ways that the parish could develop in the future. And we presented 4 different scenarios. And these are not plans, but they're ways to test drive different types of development and the impacts those could have on Ascension Parish. And just to note, Ascension Parish is projected to add over 60,000 new people, over 50,000 new jobs, and over 20,000 new housing units by the year 2042. So the scenarios show different ways that the parish could accommodate that new growth. So these are the development types that we present in those 4 scenarios. In addition to existing conditions like existing development, floodplains, and water, we had 4 types of residential development: rural, estate, residential, and small lot, and then commercial, neighborhood hub, business park, and industrial. And the first scenario we presented is the current trend, and that is what would happen if the parish continued to develop as it is developing today. So you would see more commercial, and I apologize for the small size of this, but you can go onto the plan website and see it full size and zoom in as close as you'd like. You'd see more commercial along Airline Highway. You'd see more industrial on the east bank of the Mississippi River, mostly single-family residential subdivisions throughout the parish, and then you'd see some residential and limited industrial on the west bank. And then the next 3 scenarios will be different if the parish developed in a different way than it is today, but still accommodated that new growth. So scenario 1 would be continuing Airline as a traditional commercial corridor. However, you would conserve some open space in the bend of the river, and in the Darrow area could add possibly a commercial and residential node, and then add some more residential and industrial on the west bank. Scenario 2 is another possible way, showing more new subdivisions on the large vacant lots throughout the parish, redeveloping Airline as a mixed-use corridor instead of just commercial, and then developing a mixed-use node in the Darrow area near the river. also this scenario uses green space and natural buffers between the residential and employment areas. And then our final scenario, scenario 3, shows fully leveraging the Mississippi River and Deepwater Port on both sides of the river, dispersing neighborhood hubs throughout the parish, which would be some mixed-use development, and also through the northern developed area, more like the Prairieville area, and then providing neighborhood hubs as anchors along the West Bank, and again, using green space as a buffer between the different types of development. So in addition to these spatial differences, which are shown on the 4 scenario maps that I've just gone over, we used indicators to show how each of these scenarios could impact different important issues that are facing the parish, like development in the wetlands and floodplains and housing types and job locations. And here are a snapshot of the 2 posters we used to show these indicators, and I won't go over them all, but they include things like the mix of housing on the west and east bank, the mix of owners and renters that would be in the new types of housing, and then also the employment mix for new jobs that would be created in the parish based on the land uses that would be added. And again, these are all on the website, so people can look at them in much more detail. And finally, we asked people who came to the meetings about guiding principles, and this would answer the question, what should Ascension Parish be in the future? So these guiding principles can guide us as planners as we evaluate each of these development scenarios and evaluate people's comments on them. They can guide us in developing strategies to implement the vision that we come up with, and then we can also align those implementation measures with the goals that the public has told us about. So these guiding principles are very important. And we handed a survey to the people who came to the meeting, and this survey is available on the website of the plan. And it asks people their top 3 preferences in these 4 categories: livable community, transportation and infrastructure, recreation, open space and natural environment, and economy and education. And then in addition to the open houses that we conducted the week of September 26th and 27th, we visited the 4 public high schools in the parish and went to government and math classes at those schools. And with the students, we explained the comprehensive planning process. We reviewed the background information that we used to create the plan, like demographics and existing development that's in the parish and the natural features of the parish. We asked the students' opinions on the different development types that we showed. And we also went through many of the same scenarios that I showed you and guiding principles. We also, with the students, reviewed the public input that we got from the June workshops. So we gave them an overview of what we had heard already. And we encouraged them to get involved in local decision-making, like the stuff that you guys do at the Planning Commission. And it was a really great experience. I think Jerome would like to add a few words about our high school visits.
Yes, I would. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'd like to extend a thanks to Superintendent of Ascension Parish Schools, along with all the principals of the 4 high schools that we went to. As Lauren said, we gave presentations to the senior classes for the most part for the government policy courses that are being taught at the high school. And in Donaldsonville, they had an advanced math class since they don't teach public or government. So we attended there and presented to that group. And we had an outstanding feedback from the kids. They were really wonderful. These are the kids who are going to be living with this plan in the future, and we thought it would be very important to get them involved in this. And we got excellent response from them, very involved, very interactive in the process. So we'd like to extend a thanks to the school district and the principals, for letting us make this presentation to them.
I have a couple more slides on my presentation for what's coming next. Thank you. So with that, our next steps are to compile all the ideas and comments on the scenarios. We're still taking input on those scenarios through our through the plan website on the web survey. We will hold further open houses at the end of November, and those are tentatively scheduled for November 28th and 29th. And we'll definitely get that information to you as soon as they're finalized. After we get all the input, we'll make revisions to a draft vision, and then we'll present that to you and the council in early 2019. And then the plan and policies will be developed to follow the vision in 2019 and throughout the rest of our engagement with the parish. And so finally, this is the website. The plan website is ascensionmasterplan.com, and we would love for as many people as possible to give input on the scenarios and guiding principles. All the materials that were presented at the open houses and that I showed briefly here are available through that web survey, and it's open until midnight Friday, October 19th. So we hope many, many people give their input on that. And that's it for my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you
The initial round of things where we had, I forget what they're called, but the workshops at Oak Grove where we had the maps and everybody had to put, I actually had one of the families that attended and was sitting at my table had brought an 8th grader with them who actually had some really good ideas, which is, I think, what ultimately spurred y'all to go ahead and do the presentations at the high schools. Was there any thought to maybe trying to get the 7th, 8th graders at some of the middle schools and see what they had as far as ideas? I know it sounds silly to think kids that young, but I mean, the little girl who was at our table had some really good, what I thought were really good ideas and a perspective that I think is worth at least capturing and taking into consideration.
Well, I totally agree with you that I wish young people would, participate way more than they currently do. I'm not sure in our scope that we'll be able to extend to the middle schools, but we have been continually working with the school district to pass our planning information out through them. So hopefully through that we'll get some parental involvement, and hopefully they'll bring their kids too. And then I hope that through our visiting the high schools that we can get some of those kids interested, and maybe they could bring along their families as well.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the commission? And I would just say, continue to say, I went to one of the open houses, and y'all are very organized and working very hard, and it's showing up in these presentations that you're bringing to us. So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, moving on to item number 6 is public comment on any agenda item, where the public has the right to speak on any item on the agenda. Of course, for any agenda item, most of them have a public hearing that attaches with them. So if you want to speak to that specific thing, it might be more prudent to wait till till that item comes up on the agenda. But if there's any comments on anything else, we're going to open that up now. Seeing none coming forward, we will move on to item number 7 on the agenda was the Oak Lane subdivision request for a variance from the original conditions of the preliminary plat approval. That item has been removed from the agenda. That request is not before the commission tonight. So if you're here to speak on the Oak Lane subdivision request for a variance, that item they've pulled that off the agenda tonight. Item number 8 is approval or denial of the minutes and written decisions of the September 12th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, you should have the minutes in front of you. Do I have a motion on that?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Chasson, second by Mr. Christie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Item number 9 is the consent agenda. Item number 9A is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Larry and Agnes Cuvion, Tract C, 17660 Joseph Area Road, Prairieville. Item number B is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Max D. Lawley and Patricia Joyner Lawley, unnamed lot 1 and lot 5, 41123 Highway 621 Gonzales. Item number 9C is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Fanny Montgomery, portion of lot 1, 48054 Rogers A. Road, Sandoval. Item number 9D is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Michael Montgomery, lot A1A1, 10324 Highway 937, Sandoval. Item number 9E is affidavit of mortgage declaration for Don and Karen Triana, 44034 W.E. Bill Stevens Road, Sandoval, Louisiana. Item number 9F is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for Jessica and Ryan Hodgkins, lot A1A or 1A1, 40383 Black Bayou Extension, Gonzales. And finally, 9G is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for TLCS Properties LLC, 16220 Airline Highway, Prairieville. Do I have a motion on that? So moved. Move for approval by Mr. Furman, second by Mr. Bishop. All in favor? Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, the consent agenda passes. Moving on to item number 10. On the agenda is a public hearing to approve or deny the following family partitions. The John Dixon Properties, lots A1, B1, and A1, B2, Earls and Associates. Mr. Falgood.
That one's been pulled.
I'm sorry?
Number A has been pulled.
Oh, John Dixon has been pulled? All right. Then we'll go to 10B, Joseph Ellisar Properties, lots 1A through 1D, Earls and Associates. Mr. Falgood.
Representing Mr. Gleiser on the following family partition on Bluff Road, asking the commission for approval.
Staff?
All code requirements have been met and the comments have been taken care of.
We'll open up a public hearing on this matter. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this item?
No.
We'll close the public hearing. Any questions, comments, and/or motion by the commission? Move to approve by Mr. Christie.
Second.
Second by Mr. Furman. All in favor? Aye. Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Item 10C is the Mike Giesler property, lots C1 and C2. Mr. Falgood?
Next one.
Oh, that's been pulled as well?
No,
Oh,
you
yes.
just did, yeah,
This is 10C, Mike Giesler property.
no, yeah. Asking the commission for approval.
Staff?
Yes, all elements of the code requirements have been met and comments have been addressed.
Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this matter? Then we will open the public hearing and close the public hearing. Questions, comments, and/or motion by the commission?
Move we approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Furman, second
Second.
by Mr. Chasson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none. Item 10D, are you here for that? Okay. Item 10D is the Joseph R. DeLong property, lots 1 through 5. McGlynn Taylor?
Ellen Jackson with McLean Taylor Incorporated, asking for your approval on this family partition.
Staff?
Yes, all items of the code have been adhered to and comments have been addressed.
All right, we will open a public hearing. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this? We'll close the public hearing. I have a motion by the commission.
So moved.
Move to approve by Mr. Bishop. Second by Mr. Christie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Ms. Jackson, you're here on the Patricia Jackson Dorsey property, lots A1, 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 A2, and A1, A3, and A1, B1.
Ellen Jackson again, asking for your approval.
Staff?
Yes, all items of the code have been adhered to and comments have been addressed.
We'll open a public hearing on this. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this? Who's that?
Pernella Julian.
Ms. Julian? And for anyone here wanting to speak on any of these public hearings, please remember that there's a time limit of 3 minutes. It should be displayed on the dais in front of me. Yes, ma'am.
Name is Pernella Julian. I am here to say that I think that this is not a subdivision as stated on the letter. This would be a trailer park because trailers are already there. And I think that the property is not large enough for a subdivision since the houses do not exist on it. It's only trailers. So I object to the fact that we would need more trailers on there. And I live next door, and through the years, for 20 years or less, there have been people there that have not been so up to date with their character there. And there is no sewage or anything there. There is no drainage or anything. So how can you have a subdivision when only trailers are there? I object to it. Thank you.
Is one of the conditions, am I reading this correct, that the mobile homes have to be moved prior to recording of the final map?
Yes, there are 2 mobile homes that are behind the existing residents on A1A1 that will have to be moved to pull them out of the building line.
Has anyone else signed up to speak on this?
Yes. Nedra Glasper.
Ms. Glassberg?
Good evening. My name is Nedra Glasper. I'm opposed to it because my little house that I live in is a tiny house, but it's got value to it. And more trailers are coming back there where we live. And we don't need any more trailers because we don't have adequate sewage. You have to put a septic tank down. You have to do wells and everything else. It's not planned out very well. And I oppose this subdivision at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
John Williams.
Yes, my family owned the adjacent property next to it, including myself, and I don't see in any way that that area is big enough for a subdivision. It's barely big enough for a trailer park in itself. And my land is next door, and my family land next door, and we extremely, just totally object to it, period. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this. Ms. Jackson, do you want to address any of those concerns?
Everybody's referring to a subdivision. It's not like a full subdivision or a trailer park or anything. It's just two lots that they're creating to give one to the son and one to the daughter, and that's it. So, asking for your approval. We meet all the requirements.
Are there plans to bring in multiple mobile homes in these lots, or just one single mobile home per lot?
It's just one more, if any.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a trailer park or anything.
Right.
How many are there right now?
It's 3.
And it'll be how many lots total, once the subdivision, if it's subdivided?
It'll be a total of 3 lots.
Okay.
Staff, how many mobile homes could go on this once it's divided into?
Based on, lot A1B1 is existing, was an existing lot, A1A1 and A1B1. They're creating lots A1, A2, and A1, A3 through the family petition process. There's one mobile home that will be existing on lot A1, A2. The only one that doesn't have anything on it right now will be A1, A3. This property is RM. It is capable of having units up to the maximum density, which is 3 units to the acre, provided that the owner lives in one of the units and those that live in the other units are direct heirs, parents, children, or grandparents. Other than that, as far as rentals and things of that nature, it's only allowed 1 per lot.
So if they put more than one unit per lot, has to be a direct descendant of the owner of the property.
Yes, and the owner also has to live in the other unit.
And it would be the owner who's listed on the plat as who these are being, whose name they're being put in if the subdivision takes place?
Correct.
And for the residents who were voicing concern, if this is approved and more mobile homes get put out there than what appears to be allowed, or they find out that the owner's not living there, or they're renting out like they're not supposed to, who are they supposed to, who do they report that to?
That would be a code enforcement issue.
That would go to who?
That would go to our code enforcement officer and through the building department.
So they would have to contact the planning department at the parish government and let them know and report it, the violation?
Yes.
What is the plan for the space where the 2 mobile homes exist that will be removed?
Well, they're not going to be removed. They're just going to be moved outside of the building line. They were existing. They've been there for years. So we're just going to move them outside the building line.
So they'll remain on the property?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could potentially have about 3 more mobile homes in this area.
You could, but I doubt it. Because he said it would have to be a direct descendant. And if she's giving it to her children, they can't, she's already living there, so it wouldn't.
Which lot is the current homeowner living in?
A1.
A1.
Yeah.
Okay.
A1.
Of the, what looks like 4 mobile homes currently out there right now, are any of those being rented, or any of those rentals?
There, two, I'm not sure, but, the 2 lots that are created, the mobile homes are already there, but these 2 that remain on the property, I mean, they've been there for years. I don't know if they're rentals or not.
And are the owners aware if those are rentals and they're not direct tenants, that there would have to evict the people who currently live in those mobile homes?
I'm not aware of that.
How many mobile homes are there? Are you, we're looking at what, 4 lots here altogether?
Altogether, yeah.
And they currently have 4 existing homes. And they could potentially have almost 3 more.
Potentially, but probably not.
All 3, is that right, Eric, that they could potentially have 3 more mobile homes?
I mean, lot A1, A3 could potentially have 3 on it. It's 1.
But they would all have to be direct descendants
They
of
would have to be direct descendants of the daughter, Miss Favorite.
Okay. So this can't, it's not turning into, it can't turn into a trailer park
No,
or a mobile home park.
no, it cannot.
In direct descendants, that means daughters.
Parents, children, and grandparents.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion on this?
Real quick, let me ask you this. Where it says that in A1, A2, those 2 that are to be moved, what exactly do you mean by that?
They're just gonna be moved behind the building line that's required.
Okay, so they're basically just going to be straightened up and,
Mhm.
okay.
They're going to stay on A1, A1?
They will, because they've been there forever. They're just moving them back past the building line.
And you don't know who lives in any of those 4 mobile homes right now?
No, I don't. They didn't tell me to find out.
I mean, if they're in code, if they're in violation of the code, then code enforcement should be out there enforcing the code, I would think.
Yes, that's correct.
Staff didn't, check this.
I don't know. Did we, there's been no verification that the current residents in the mobile homes meet the requirements?
No. The only requirement that they, as far as this subdivision was that they be out of the building line because of the servitude that was being put to the rear of the property.
I guess if we want, I don't know, Cody, can we approve it subject to them verifying that the current occupants in the other mobile homes are direct descendants?
They could potentially be a non-conforming use. It could have existed before zoning. So they may not even, they may not have to be direct descendants if those mobile homes were there prior to us enacting zoning.
But any new
But
trailer on
any-
that property
correct.
would have to be a direct descendant.
Correct.
Even if they're required to be moved, that wouldn't subject them to anything else?
No, that's
And I
just,
mean,
that's just
I
a building
understand.
setback issue, not a use issue.
The residents have a valid concern, and I think that we need to take that seriously. I'm more worried about whenever they're having everybody travel down that road, how is everybody going to access this bottom plat?
So if I'm looking at this right, the only lot that could add mobile homes would be A1, A3, right?
Correct.
All the others are maxed out. Seems like the neighboring residents are concerned about additional mobile homes. So Ms. Favorite would have to occupy a trailer before any others could come in.
Yes, that's correct.
That's right.
And they would have to be direct heirs of hers, either parents, children, or grandparents.
And that's all assuming if she puts a mobile home. If she puts slab on grade house, then it's all said and done.
Then there's no
Right.
There's no more additional
Okay.
building on it.
Could they build a house and then also put mobile home on it? Or
No.
Yes.
Yes, they
Yes, they
could.
could,
Oh,
as long as it's
Dwelling
a-
unit.
Yeah, as long as it's a secondary family member. Secondary unit and it's a direct family member.
All right, do we have a motion on this?
I'm going to make a motion to approve. I understand your concerns, but I think that given that the oddity that it would take for multiple in that back area, this is just them subdividing their land. I don't believe that they would be putting 3 houses on that unit. So I'm going to make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Schexnayder, second by Mr. Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay. Nay.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Furman?
Nay.
Mr. Bishop?
Aye.
Mr. Christie? Mr. Chasson?
Nay.
Mr. Schexnayder?
Yay.
And the chair votes in favor, so the vote is 4-2. The motion carries. Thank you, ma'am. All right, item number 10F is the estate of Leola Shelvin, lots 1 through 9. Ms. Jackson?
Ellen Jackson again, asking for your approval.
All elements of the code have been adhered to, and comments have been addressed.
Ms. Stacy, is anyone signed up?
No.
All right, we will open the public hearing, close the public hearing. Do we have questions, comments, and/or motion by the commission?
Move we approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Furman, second by Mr. Christie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, thank you, Ms. Jackson. Item number 11 is a public hearing to approve or deny the following preliminary plats. The Villas at Rosewood, a town home development, BM Aguilar Associates, LLC.
Brian Aguilar with BM Aguilar and Associates. We presented the plat preliminary checklist. I'm pretty sure all those items have been addressed. Should have the information in front of you. I'm be glad to have, more than happy to answer any questions by you or anybody else asking for approval.
Staff?
Yes, all elements have been reviewed, comments have been addressed on the plat. If you have any specific questions about traffic and drainage, the ERA can address those.
Mr. Shiro, can you comment on traffic and drainage?
For, I guess, first item regarding drainage, at this time, all items have been addressed for a preliminary plat submittal.
There are 3 retention ponds?
Pardon me?
There are 3 retention ponds?
Yes, there are 3 retention ponds.
Okay.
But if you needed more details regarding the design and elements, I would like to prefer if the design engineer can comment on those items. But yes, they have detention ponds to mitigate their runoff. And regarding traffic, they utilize the new traffic impact study policy, where they're required to look at the adjacent intersections, and they no improvements are recommended or required in order to mitigate the proposed extra cars from their development.
All right, we'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this. Ms. Stacy?
No.
No one signed up for this? We will close the public hearing on this. Questions, comments, and/or a motion?
I have a question. This is on Highway 42 by Highway 44, is that right?
Correct.
Given the fact that this is a area that has high volume on the roads, undergoing substantial growth, and has excessive traffic congestion, was there any consideration given to requiring a threshold 3 traffic impact study?
I don't think so. I didn't do the traffic study myself, but it wasn't required as a threshold 3.
The traffic, as I've been reading the traffic impact policy, it says that peak hour trips are not the only threshold to be considered. They may require a more significant study if it's a high accident area experiencing excessive traffic congestion, areas undergoing substantial growth, high volume on surrounding roads, lack of existing left turns on adjacent roadways, inadequate sight distance, proximity of proposed access points to exiting drives and developments that include drive-through operations. This area, at least to me, seems to meet a bunch of these as far as excessive traffic congestion, substantial growth, high volumes on roadways, and the accidents. I didn't know if there was any consideration, given that most of these are met, to requiring a level 3, so we can make sure that it's actually going to be a safe, is not going to negatively impact those intersections or those roads in that area, make them any more dangerous.
I apologize, I don't have the copy of the policy in front of me tonight, but I believe a threshold 3. Well, first of all, this project on the old policy would have only been required to look at their intersection. The cutoff point used to be 40 trips. Also, the new policy required them to use the latest generation manual during a review process. They made that adjustment, and this is the first project of this small size since in a long time that's ever been required to look at adjacent intersections. And the reason is, with only 54 cars going each direction, their cars relative to the overall intersections is so minimal that you can see a lot of these drops are very, very minimal. So a threshold 3 or look to any more intersections than what they did, their impact would have been diluted that much more. And so that was one of the considerations where jumping up to a different threshold already above from a 1 to a 2 was just, we didn't feel it was warranted for this project.
But the threshold 3, as I'm looking at it, would have required an accident, review of crash reports to look at safety on those roads, and I know that's a high accident area.
Specifically, the Joe Saverio intersection is widely known as a very accident-prone intersection. That's one of the concerns that we had. I mean, Joe Saverio at 42 there's always a wreck there. And that's not even an improved part of Highway 42, or not even scheduled to be an improved part.
Yeah, no, to me, it seems like from looking at the traffic impact policy and the new and the way, and I know we're still trying to feel our way through this and kind of set parameters and all that, but as I was looking at it, I mean, it seems one of the issues why it does not want to use peak hour as the only factor is due to multiple issues with but when you're dealing with a high accident area or an area experiencing excessive traffic growth or traffic congestion, that it wants you to at least consider whether a higher threshold analysis should be done, because those issues kind of take it outside the norm. And given that that is an area that is very accident prone and very high congestion, and while 42 is going to be improved, it's going to stop at 44 or just past 44, not go quite all the way to where this is. And given how accident prone 42 at Saverio is, whether that should have, under one of the considerations we should be looking at in these areas is whether we should require the threshold 3 so that we can get the crash reports and make sure that it's a safe area, not so much concerned about just the traffic, but the safety as well, which seems to be at least in my interpretation of this new policy, something that the council would want us to consider. Am I interpreting that correctly, Cody, or do you have any opinion on that?
I mean, I can tell you what the policy says, but it's discretionary, and it's basically up to the Department of Public Works to decide what level of threshold they want to increase it. I can read it to you if you want.
No, I've got it pulled up in front of me. Who's the DP? What is the DPD? Who's the DPD?
If you go up to the first paragraph, the second section, DPD is the Department of Planning and Development.
Okay. So in our case, that would be the ERA, basically? All right. So that's who has the discretion to determine whether they think it should be higher to a threshold 3, I guess, or higher than the peak traffic analysis to make that decision?
Policy says either DPD or its designee, which is the review agency.
Is there any, again, I know this is new and we're still trying to work our way through, has there been any guidelines or procedures or anything set to figure out at what point we would look at or require a higher threshold study than what is required based only on peak traffic hours or peak trips based on these criteria identified on the bottom of page 3 and the top of page 4 of the traffic impact policy?
I'll answer that. There's no formal checklist, guidance, matrix. This is what we would trigger as high accident. I just know that prior to every pre-application meeting, we send a traffic information form out to Department of Public Works, talking about proposed improvements, accidents, issues, items, that, plus as a group at our pre-application meeting, we all think about, look at the project. I'm sure we consider this project's under construction at that time, which causes its own unique situations. And in that setting, none of us, based on the number of trips, even considering these other items, did we felt it was warranted to jump to a threshold 3, which you're looking at would be just adding the additional crash reports to this project. That's probably a lot of what factored that in is this subdivision's volumes relative to the overall volume of 42. Sometimes when it's a larger subdivision, it's already, a lot of those things come into play, and none of those items triggered us as a group to say, let's add in the crash data as part of the traffic impact study.
And you're using the best practices model for traffic engineering?
There's nothing really set in stone what would everyone consider as we definitely need to pull the crash reports, and for every single threshold for 2 and up, considering that we really didn't look at traffics on the previous studies. I think it was maybe when we started looking at 400 cars or more, that used to be the number. Now we're starting to look at it, consider it for this project when it's only 40 trips. So like I said, there's no standard of what we'd say it's so high, let's start thinking about it. But if it's a wish of the Planning Commission for the ERA and us to weigh more heavily on accident data, if it's an easy report to pull, just to go ahead and have it in there for a public hearing, then we can easily do that. As you said, we're still trying to fill our way through.
Well, the decision to go to a level 3, I mean, this was something that you came to through a consensus with the planning department? Or to not go to level 3?
Yeah, I mean, we use emails, we communicate, and I think during this project, it started off as a threshold 1 to the review process. We had review comments that use latest trip generation tools, and that new trip generation tripped this over from like a 40 count to like a 53 count, which it put it just over it. So during the review process, which we never have looked at it before, forced them to go study 2 intersections, have some additional input. So,
I mean, and what I'm trying to understand is there's a lot of questions, and there's a statement. Well, there's always a wreck at Joseph Ario and Highway 42, which, I mean, that's anecdotal, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but we don't know how many trips per day or how many cars pass that versus how many wrecks per year occur at that intersection, and if it's that deadly, the parish should be doing something probably to recraft it like they did with Highway 42 and Highway 44. What I'm trying to understand, though, is that it seems like instead of just saying, oh, well, this is a level 2, this is a level 3, y'all get together, you discuss it, you take what's been done before, you look at these guidelines and decide, based on your expertise and experience, whether it's a level 2 or a level 3 review of traffic. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. You said it much better than I tried to.
I don't know if I said it better, but that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes,
this isn't.
We're not in a vacuum as the ERA, and just, I mean, there's emails. We're all copied. We have pre-application meetings. We involve the traffic departments. There's a lot of people involved in this whole process, and never once did it. We all stood back and felt like this project warranted going to a threshold 3.
And Cody, that's. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that's the way the new guidelines are designed to work, that let the experts use their best judgment and the best practices of what they do to determine the threshold that's applicable.
The policy in and of itself references discretionary act, so it just gives them the authority if they think so. Okay. But just to point out too, look guys, the difference between a level 2 and a level 3, level 2 is less than 40 trips, and then a level 3 is 400. So that's a pretty big difference when you're only talking about 53 here. It's barely into level 2. So just wanted to point that out to you.
So there could be a time where if you're looking at something that generates, if this was generating 350 trips in that area, that might generate a traffic threshold. But being that you're just into the level 2 or threshold 2, you're not getting into threshold 3.
That was the major point of deciding just to stick with threshold 2. They were on the bare minimum, just barely crossed over into that threshold.
And look, Cody, I'm not saying y'all did anything wrong. I'm just trying to, Sean, I'm sorry, that y'all did anything wrong. This is, again, we're still trying to feel our way through all this. I just want to see if there was any consideration given to those factors other than just the amount of trips generated during peak traffic time, because it seems like on my reading of the policy that at least in high congestion areas, high traffic areas, high crash areas, that the parish, when they implemented the policy, wanted there to be some consideration of the safety, not just the traffic numbers. And so that I'm just trying to, like everybody else, feel our way through the new policy and see whether there was any consideration at least given to whether a 3 should be done beyond just, oh, well, it's only 50 trips, so we're not going to look at it. That's basically it.
Any other comments or questions or a motion?
I actually had a question. One of the things I noticed is, especially on 42 right now, this is actually very close to like Eagles Landing. Eagles Landing doesn't have a turn-in off of 42 coming back the other way. I guess that would be northbound. You don't really have another way in or out this way, so there's no way to prevent that.
I'm not sure I understand.
So in other words, at Eagles Landing, if you're coming northbound on 42, you cannot take a left into the subdivision.
If you're coming from
if you're coming,
Amite
for
River.
instance, Amite River Road,
you cannot turn.
You're not supposed to. You
I understand.
Can, but
that was I'm also familiar with that project too. That was a request from DOTD. We fought for a light at that for that intersection there, and DOTD recommended exactly what they have there. That was strictly DOTD state recommendation that we had to follow.
Plus, I believe on Eagles Landing, they also have an exit on the Joe Savario.
They do.
So
That's
usually
correct.
DOTD's philosophy is to control left turn movements, especially if you have the benefit of having access to another roadway. So they probably want all those left turn movements to go to Joe Savario onto that intersection. And that was a big factor into that one. They had more than one spot to do it.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at is there no other way that is there a way that they could open up possibly this development into a possible future exit onto Joe Savario or anything like that?
No, there's no adjoining property anywhere, not even at the rear. We don't have access to a road at the rear. So the answer is no. There's no any other way to enter and exit this property.
Okay. I noticed on the plat that they have what looks to be that they're going to plan on putting a 6-foot wooden fence, a privacy fence on what looks to be on the south side. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But they didn't have one on the north side. Is that it was just not requested by anybody?
We show one on the north side.
Okay. Let's see it. Oh, north side. I'm sorry, south side then.
Yeah, it's not orientated north-south, but
So I guess that would be east instead of west. So there's no privacy fence delineated on the west side. Is that just because it was not requested, or is that something that
the west being?
I think he's talking about lots 28, 29, 30,
behind there.
Yes, there's a fence. We show a 6-foot fence there. May not have gotten drawn to the end of lot 28, but it will be.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Aguilar.
Yes, sir.
There was a note about the sidewalks must tie in to that little portion that goes to the pier.
Yes, sir.
And then when we follow that sidewalk around, it looks like it doesn't wrap all the way around the retention pond. Is that drawing correct, or does it continue around?
We basically provided a walking path, but we don't have enough room to get all the way around. We could possibly move the pond around to make that walking path go entirely around there, but we didn't plan on going all the way around.
Dirt path, you mean, or you mean the sidewalk?
Well, we just planned a stone path.
Okay.
and the sidewalks around the subdivision will be concrete.
So around the pond is going to be another hard surface, not concrete.
Correct.
All the way around. And then there was a notation about, what is it, that the sewer treatment plant needs to be, sewer pump station needs to be on a dedicated tract?
Yes, sir.
What's going on with that?
The sewer, we had originally planned on putting private treatment in for this development. At the pre-app meeting, the parish informed us that we have adequate capacity in the existing system. There's a tail end of the improvements on 42 provided a manhole on this property in the front, and that manhole is existing. And the parish told us that we must tie into that system if they had the capacity. We've got a letter from the parish stating they've got capacity for us to tie in. So we're coming with a gravity system to a pump station that is located near the front of the subdivision by the pond on the bottom. And that pump station will then pump directly into that gravity manhole to be treated by the parish.
What's currently on this property right now?
There's an existing house, an existing pond as shown. That's it, basically pasture land, used to be a farm.
And while I noticed that it's in flood zone X, you know, I know that area is prime for some review. Did it carry, how much water, do you have any idea how much water it carried during the big storm?
To my knowledge, there was no water on this property.
Okay.
I don't think water got across 42.
Not in that area?
42, correct.
Just not in that area? Okay.
Right, across, I know down the Muddy Creek, across 42 down, when Muddy Creek dips down, it obviously got into there, but to my knowledge, there's no water got on this property at all.
I move that we approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Bishop. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Furman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition?
Nay.
Nay.
Do a roll call vote. Mr. Furman?
Aye.
Mr. Bishop?
Aye.
Mr. Christie?
Aye.
Mr. Chasson?
Nay.
Mr. Scheck-Snyder?
Nay.
All right, chair votes in favor, so it's 4-2 and the motion passes.
Do we have to say our nays or?
No.
Cody, do you want us to put?
It passed, there's no
Okay.
requirement under the legislature reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you.
All right, item number 12 is staff report.
Staff has no report tonight.
Engineering, staff.
No report this evening.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
By Mr. Chasson. All right, we will take a short recess and return with the zoning meeting. Meeting is adjourned.